Hello everyone, it's Linda from Linda's Ease in Arlington Heights, ready for holiday. You can see I'm all decked out with my Scan and Cut Merry Christmas shirt, and I've got to turn around because this is really a fun one. Do you really believe this, everyone? Can you get that up close, Nick? Oh, wave it. As you can tell, I love Christmas and love, as you can tell, I really love Christmas, and this is just a wonderful array of wonderful tools to make it even more fun. So today I promised you a couple of videos back that this table runner that we have been working on, that I did on the magnetic sash hoop with binding, that I would show you how I did it and what I did for that. I have a couple of other ones too that I'm going to show you. There are many different ways to do binding. This was one of my most fun projects that I've done in a long time because of this wonderful little tool. And some of you remember seeing this before. I have this binding wheel that I use. I first take the little bias binder and make the binding. And with this particular binding for this tablecloth, or for this table runner, what I decided to do is to go ahead and take it. It's like a bias bind, and you can see what happens here. I'm pulling it out, and then I take it to the iron, so I press it as I'm doing that, and I'm going to take it over to the iron in a moment. But before I do that, I wound this whole entire piece, which was about 20 some yards, 20 some inches. And what I do, of course, I have to take the strips, I cut them lengthwise, and then I have to sew them together. Now you're not going to sew them together like this straight on. You're going to sew them at an angle so that they will nice and smoothly and easily go around your piece. So if you can see this little ruler that I have, this is one of the nifty notions, or good measure they call it. And you can use any ruler, it doesn't have to necessarily be this one, but I love it because if you look at the little pink here, you can see that that is going right along the edge, and this little green is also going along the edge. And what I'm trying to accomplish, I'm going to sew these two pieces together so they look perfect, but I want to go from this edge to this point. See right here, from here to here. And the way that you do that, I'll take the ruler out of here so I can get this even. These are salvage edges up here. Normally I would trim off those salvage edges, but because they're here, I'm going to trim them off anyway after I do the piece. But how I attach them is I put the right side one on top of the other. This is a right side. The one under this piece has been turned over to the right side. And then I take just a little pin and put it in there, or if you're real comfortable with this, you don't even need the pin. And then I'm going to get this exactly into the corner. I'm going to take, I love this bone marking pen. I think it's just wonderful because it really does erase afterwards. And you want to go right from this corner. You see where that little corner is? Right down to here. And you really want to get it right in the edge of the corner. So now you can see the little piece here. I'm going to take, well, I'm not going to use the stylus right now. The little stiletto is really a great thing when I'm doing the actual piecing. But I'm going to go over to my Bernina, and I have the straight stitch foot on, and I have the straight stitch plate on. Because when I'm piecing, I always, and I hope everyone has heard this before, I always use a straight stitch plate. I don't care what machine that I have. The other thing that I do when I get ready to sew is I always take and put that needle down, and now my fabric is going to go right up next to the edge of the needle. Can you see that? Let me get this little stiletto so you can see it. You see that needle right there? And you see where the fabric is? It's right up next to it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch from this side, and I want to end up right here at this point, and then you'll have a perfect piece that's been put together if you don't move it around. Okay, so let me go ahead and sew that for you, and you can see that it's moving. The straight stitch just makes it so much easier to do. Now watch, I'm just going to go right off the edge, right at the point. You're going to take your little scissor, do a little trim, remove your pin, and remember you have your empty circle and you have your full circle over here. So that way you can work with the two of them. Now you can see I'm going to take this and I'm going to press this, and I don't know if you can see it from here, but it's perfect. I mean, you can, even before I press it, you can see it's really, really good. Now I am going to trim this off because you do not want to have the full piece in there. I've seen people that have put these pieces together before, and they've actually left, you've got all this extra fabric, and who would want to leave that in there? So you want to get rid of that, and then you want to get rid of your tails. There's no reason to have those little flip things up there. Same way with this side, the little tails you're going to get rid of. And then we're going to take this, and we're actually going to press this open because it will make a nice smooth seam. Now you have to be careful when you're pressing, because if you do press this where you're pulling and tugging on your fabric, what could happen is you could stretch your fabric out, and you don't want that to happen. You want it to be perfect. So now I'll take this over to the Laura Star, and I want to show you what I'm going to do there. So now I've put my Laura Star iron on, and those of you that haven't seen this before, it's just a phenomenal piece of equipment because it's got this wonderful steam. And before I start, I'm not doing that just to show you what it does. Whenever I pick my iron up and I haven't been using it for a while, I always do this first, because what it's doing, it's bringing this steam through the hose so there's no water that'll get on my garment. But now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to press that seam open, and you can see with this, it's got a little metallic thread, and there is a board. See this little button here? Now watch how I plopped it down. I'm going to leave that up. See how it puffed up again? Because this way I can make sure that I don't get any wrinkles in my piece. Now I'm going to flip it over on the other side. Look at how perfect that is. And now I'm just going to give it a press. Not an iron. I'm pressing it, and there's a big difference where I'm going up and down and up and down. I might give it just a quick little shot of stream, but you do not want to stretch the fabric out. So this is how I put all of my strips together. Now, once I've got them together, this is the key that is, I can't even tell you how much fun I've had with this. This is a little piece of this same 2-inch binding. I made it 2 inches. And I take it through this little bias holder, this little plastic bias holder. It comes in different colors. You can get it in, I don't know, reds or grays or pinks, whatever's left. It doesn't matter the color, it's the function. And what it does is, you can see how it's going into this little piece, and what it's doing, it's folding this piece in half to actually make a bias piece for me. It's like a bias tape, only it's actually going to be a piece that we are going to finish our table runners with. Now I give it a nice little press, and you can see I'm going to then continue on. Don't do too much at one time. I'm going to go over here again, and I'm going to press it this time again. And then I'll just keep going all the way through till I get long strips. Now, this little roller that I have that's already full of a binding on it, I didn't want to roll it off because I've already wound it up. But this little roller is just wonderful. It's got a clamp on here. And now what I would do is I would take, let's go the way that it's been wound on here, and I would just take and wind this, let me go this way, and I will wind this all on. There is a little place in the middle where I can take and it'll hold the fabric as you're going. And you get the idea. I'm just going to wind the whole entire strip once it's been pressed, the whole entire thing onto this little piece. And it is just a marvelous thing. Now I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to go over to the machine and show you a couple of things that I'm going to do with it. You can envision that this binding has all been done. I've got yards of it, and I've wound it around. I have a different one on here, but you can see another use for this, which is just wonderful. I could keep it here, and then what I do is I put this binding on. I take this clamp and clamp it to my table and hold this binding, and then I can take the binding, if it's the correct one, which it's this actually, I would take that and put it all the way around. I really do like the clips for this. It's very easy to clip this on. It's even on both sides, which I think is really wonderful for putting this kind of a finish on a table runner, because many of my quilts, as most of you know, I do most of the hand binding and when we do our quilts in our store. And I like to have the hand stitch for the quilt on the reverse side. But on these table runners, even though this is Christmas, or you could use it probably for Valentine's Day too, this one is really going to be done for, you know, you're going to be throwing it in the machine and in the wash. And in fact, the one behind me, this was just washed before I brought it in here. So I do throw them, I do use them a lot, and I do wash them with that Soften soap. I think it's a great product. But when I'm doing that, this stitch is really a much better stitch rather than the straight stitch trimming and doing the hand sewing. So let me show you how I did this. I've got a few little scraps left so you can see the stitch. And I go over to the Bernina, and those of you that don't realize what I'm doing, this is a brand new sewing machine that I absolutely love. It's actually mine, and we are so fortunate. We just got a few of them in. I'm going to raise that needle so I can just push it right up. This was my straight stitch foot, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and look at how easy this is to change my plate. I had a straight stitch plate on there before whenever I was piecing, but now I'm going to use a decorative stitch to finish off this. And when I do that, I want to go ahead and put my plate on, and you can see it's got a zigzag on. See how it's got an opening? But those of you that are really familiar with some of these machines, can you tell me what's different about this machine and why I love it so much? Anybody? I'd love to hear an answer on that, and I'd love to know how many of you have noticed it. See what's happening right here? Let me point it out again. Between here and here, you're right. It's a 5mm machine. I love it. This is the original 5mm that Bernina came out with years ago. Those of you remember the way back, some of you do, some of you are too young to remember it, but we did have a 630, we had a 730, and it had the 5mm stitch, and it was the most beautiful stitch in the world. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to go back to my menu, and I have a little decorative stitch file folder here. So I'm going to go into the 600s, and I'm going to find one. What's really fun about this is I did a whole bunch of these on a simple piece of fabric, something like this. And I tried and I found one that I really liked. Now, if you look at the actual fabric, you can see that the fabric's got metallic in it, and the actual placemat has got metallic in it too. And so I just fold them over. Now remember, they are clipped with one of your holders. You don't want to just do this off the cuff. You really do, on this particular one, want to keep them on here so you can really see how they're sewing. And let me start from here. This is just a little sample, but look at the foot. This is on number 20. It's an open toe embroidery foot. And it's just fabulous because what it will do, you've got a guide here, and I'm guiding this. I've got a knee lift lever here, which again, I just love. And I'm going to put this fabric right up to the edge of the guide, and then I'm just going to go ahead and sew. Now you may ask, what am I sewing? What kind of thread? I have the Madeira thread. It's a 40 weight thread on here. And then I have the 60 weight thread in the bobbin because I want it to be, you know, I want it to pull and look nice, a decorative stitch from the top, but the bottom is just as nice. That's the one thing about a Bernina. Now, this is why I say a little stiletto that I just dropped. There, I found it. I dropped it on the floor. And you know what's really great is if you can see this, I don't know if you can see it up close, but see how this got a little rough edge to it? So it's very easy to hold, and it's wonderful to be able to give you the decorative stitch. And look how it's going right up to the edge. I could go over a little tiny bit. And I've already done this part, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to go ahead and do my thread cut. And you can see I have a perfect decorative stitch. Now I try to use thread that will blend in with the binding because I think it's really a great way to do it. And again, like I said, having this folded binding just makes it so easy to do. It's already folded. You put it right on, you do your decorative stitch, and you're ready to go. You can see on the actual table runner the way that I've done this, and I also have another piece of fabric that I want to show you, and this I'm going to do in another video. And this, I think, is fun for you to be able to see also. This is a table mat, just a placemat. And what I'm going to do on here, of course, before we do this, there's a front and a back, and if one gets dirty, you can turn it right over, which is kind of nice. I will do this kind of piece on the Laura Star again, with using this binding thing. When we first got this, I honestly, quite frankly, didn't know if I would really like it, and I cannot show you something that I don't love. Well, now every one of our staff has one of these because we are using it so much. So before I get into doing that, I have a piece on the back, the front, and in the middle, of course, sandwiched is my batting. And it's a little lighter batting because this is going to be a placemat that I'm going to do some quilting on it first. You could just do some channel stitching or ruler work, or you could just do lines down here if you're new, and here and here and here. However you want to finish, you can do it very quickly. Then once I've done that, and I always keep my batting a little bit wider than my top and bottom, trim it off. Do the same thing with this piece that we did. Once it's trimmed off, see if I can get a piece down here to show you. You're going to put it on here, and you're going to put the edges. Now I'm going to use this, and the thread that I'm going to use is going to be very similar to the binding because I don't want it to show up. Now, if you wanted it to show up, then you could, of course, use a decorative stitch. But see how nice it'll look? I mean, this is a different color, but I'm going to use the gold, and then we'll do the same thing that I did on the machine. Now, I am actually going to do, probably in January for you, just one video short to show you how to fold and miter your edges. Just one video on the folding and mitering of your corners. I'm going to do another video that will show you how to finish off. Let's see if I can find it here. It's hard to find. Where I actually, I think it was at the bottom there, where I actually put the pieces together because I had them all pinned or I had them clipped all the way around. I mitered the corners very easily. I'm going to show you that too. Mitering here is a little bit different than the mitering that I'm going to show you on this if you're using regular binding. This is your regular binding with your raw edges on either side. And let me give you a little tip. The width of the binding is going to be very important when you figure out the ending of how it's going to get finished. So I'll leave you with that little thought. I do want to show you another table runner that I did that, again, this is done by hand. So it's up to you what type of finish that you'd like to do. This is just I love the borders. Anytime you can find a border fabric, you can see this is all done with borders. But the difference is this, and then there's a little piece we put in here and here. So we've got that nice little taper. But what I've done here is the binding was stitched by machine on the right side. It was flipped over to the wrong side, and then we did the little whip stitch. The same way with the one that's hanging up here with the little chickadees, although I got it the wrong way, but you could turn it the other way. The backing too, just fun. This is all done with quilting in the hoop. So you could take, the wonderful thing about this Bernina is that it does come, with the ability for you to be able to add an embroidery unit later. And I know many of our quilters say, well, I'm a quilter, why would I ever want this? If you're a quilter, you want this 720. It's just phenomenal. Many of you know I have other Berninas, but this is my piecing machine. I'm always using it for piecing. If I wanted to, and I just had one machine, the great thing about is you can add an embroidery unit to it later to do your quilting in the hoop. So I hope that's giving you a little bit of stress relief from the holidays, because I think we always have that with what's going on in our world. And I just want you to have a little fun, relax. You can view this over and over and maybe try one of these yourself. See you next week, and we have a real fun little thing planned for you for Christmas Eve. See you soon.